Welcome to another edition of Geopolitics and Empire. As always, the best way is to support the podcast is by becoming a paid subscriber on the Substack. I do a weekly news analysis for supporters only. It's in audio, video, and written format. I go through the world events. Takes me about 60 to 90 minutes. A lot of people very much enjoy that, and I organize off-the-record Zoom calls for supporters only. You can donate as well through the website, purchase a console if you want to chat with me, check out my affiliates. And you can also listen ad-free on Apple. You can purchase the Apple subscription for $50 a year, so you don't have to listen to the ads. And I haven't had time yet, but I'm going to set up Supercast as well, which will allow you the same ad-free experience on any podcast player of your choosing. So bear with me. I think that's all the housekeeping news. Joining us for the first time on the podcast is from Israel is Harry Kaufman of the Wovenart YouTube channel. Shalom, Harry.
Shalom, shalom. Thank you very much for having me. It's a pleasure.
So I was recently interviewed by you a while back on your channel, and then we were talking, I guess, afterwards off the record. And you've been listening to Geopolitics and Empire, I guess, for a while. And I just found my conversation with you. I just found you to be very interesting, very fascinating, and I thought I want to get you on because you're living out there in the Middle East, and you've got a lot to say, and you've got your pulse on the globalist shenanigans. And so maybe just to start, whatever you want to tell us about your background, you waking up and then you getting involved, as you were telling me, in the Israeli alternative media scene through Telegram and other platforms.
Yeah, so I woke up to realize that something is wrong in 2007. And since then, I decided to dedicate my life basically to study things very deeply, because it's not enough just to view a few Telegram videos and to think that you already understand the full scale of what's happening. So it requires dedication and deep research into many different aspects, because everything is connected. And eventually, when I was trying to speak to people for many years, it was almost impossible, because people just reject any kind of idea that I was trying to advance. But during the pandemic, people started to wake up, especially here in Israel. And then I was trying to organize different kind of groups that actually meet face to face to give them an alternative to the psychosis, the collective insanity that happened. And we actually created a sense of community where we met twice or three times per week during the lockdowns. And it was very harsh here in Israel. I think that this was the place where they did most of the trial. This is the first country that they introduced the wonderful injection, Pfizer and all the rest of that. And we try to create an alternative and to awaken the people to understand the dangers and how they can escape it, and how they can continue their day-to-day life. And later on, I was building a Telegram group, and we had a few thousand members, and we were trying to advance the ideas of morality, objective morality, freedom, which is extremely important, and family, because there is an attack on the family, attack on civil society, and we have to understand the danger and to have an alternatives and solutions and an answer to that. So that's basically the background. And even more people woke up during the 7th of October, and which was, it was a terrifying moment here in Israel. We were completely unready for this vicious attack. And if you like, we can discuss that, or I don't know where you want to go next.
Yeah, and some people are like red flag right now who are listening, and it's like, look, what I like to do is talk to a spectrum of folks.
Mm-hmm.
I'm talking to my listeners now. I had a Gideon Levy on a few years back, and I want to get him back again. And so I want to talk to Palestinians. I want to talk to Israelis, and I want to hear these different views. And so people can come to their own conclusions. So I'm just telling the listeners right now who, when they heard you say what you just said, they're like, oh, I don't want to listen to this guy anymore. He's a shill. And I've also, mentioned that some portion of listeners tend to get a bit schizophrenic and just say, they have a black and white perspective. Everything's a psyop. And it's like, we have to have nuance, right? We have to parse things out. And especially for people who have formed an opinion of what's going on, who've never been right to Israel or to the Middle East. And so, maybe I'd like to start just you as an Israeli living in Israel, and some of your colleagues and friends have woken up, maybe to get you to tell us, how do Israelis such as yourself view the Israeli state? And for example, I'm an American, I'm a Croatian and a Mexican. I think we have the similar view when it comes to the states. I eschew and disdain all states. I don't really like any politicians. I see they're all pretty much implementing a globalist program. So what's your view on sort of the state of Israel?
Yeah, well, I can't speak on behalf of others, and I don't even see myself as an Israeli. I see myself as a man, as a father, as a friend, hopefully your friend, and I don't even use this collective terminology. But I do live here in this ghetto called Israel, which is a much better ghetto compared to the neighboring countries. If your guests are going to come and visit Israel, they are going to see that this is basically a Western civilization on every aspect of our life. We understand and accept human rights. We have a lot of relative freedom, because wherever you have a state, in the end of the day, you don't really have enough freedom. But my position is that first and foremost, my government is my enemy. So I do not support any government, and in my groups, we were like trying to push and advocate and teach the understanding of a voluntary society where you have no coercion and no violence, which is basically the definition of what a state is, because a state is a monopoly of power and law in a certain geographic area. So we are just like serfs living here and being molested by our own government. And basically every war can only happen if the state led by psychopaths can basically tax the population and draft our children to unnecessary wars. So all in all, I'm very much against any state, and I have a lot of criticism against my own so-called leaders, and I would prefer to get rid of them, all of them, no exception. But in regards to the challenges that we are experiencing here, before we are going to speak, for example, about what happened in the 7th of October, I would like to just give you a taste, or to your audience, a deeper understanding of what Islam is. So, because they are spending huge amounts of money to try to illustrate Islam as the religion of peace. There is nothing peaceful about it. Actually, the idea of Islam is submission. And if you really go back in time and you look at the life of Muhammad, you can see that he was a warlord. He is responsible directly for attacking Jewish and Christian tribes. In one day, there was a Jewish tribe that he removed the heads of 600 to 900 men in one day. He enslaved the women, enslaved the children, a lot of things that you can find in mainstream history about his life and doings. And as soon as he died in 632, I believe, in less than 100 years, 120 years, we come to about 750. You have different empires which were extremely imperialistic, and they conquered and destroyed Persia, for example, in less than 20 years. They reached all the way to Spain and conquered that for 700 years. And they controlled about 70% of the old Christendom, the world of Christianity. All the holy places of Christianity, like Jerusalem, Antioch, Byzantine later on, Alexandria, and a few other very important cities were all conquered by Islam. And that was not a religion of peace. That was a brutal attack by different empires like the Umayyad, the Abbasid, the Fatimids, and later the Turks. And Christians don't even understand it, and Western civilization, the Muslims actually reached even Iceland and Denmark. They are responsible for kidnapping something like about 1.5 or 2 million white Christians from Europe. The Vatican in Rome has a wall to protect it from Muslim attacks. And you had about 548 fights and battles against Western civilization, against Christianity. So it was very vicious and brutal. And if you really come to think about it, the Crusades was basically a defense war that the Christians finally, after almost 500 years, decided to go and try to reclaim the lands that they lost to Islam. So the idea that we are living beside some peaceful civilization that understand human rights is wrong. It's a huge mistake. And if you learn and study history, you can come to the conclusion that this is a very vicious and imperialistic. And even America, the first war that they ever had, I think it was 1801 to 1805, against who? Against the Barbaries in North Africa, Tripoli, Morocco, Algeria, and Tunis. Those countries were viciously aggressive against the sailors of America. So this is the context of what I'm talking about, and very important for people to understand when we are talking, for example, about slavery. It's very easy to always blame the West, blame the white, blame the Americans. All the slaves that were brought to North America, to the States, for example, was about 400,000 people. That's all. And they were living in such relatively better environment that allowed them to increase in size and to become 13% of the population today, and to enjoy the greatest country that the world has ever knew, with 40 million people. But if you look at what happened in Islam, you can see that they had slavery until today for 14 centuries. And they are responsible for the death of about 20 million slaves, including a lot of white Christians that were taken from their homelands. And there are some statistics that I came across that it says that the slaves that survived are just 1 out of 5 on average, because the circumstances were so vicious and drastic that many died. So if that's true, we are talking about a scale of about more than 100 million people, of mostly black people, who were killed and castrated by this loving, peaceful Islam. Now, if we go into this conflict with Israel, so I would like to focus on a few things. Before the establishment of Israel in 1948, we had here the Ottoman Empire, and after that, the British Mandate. Now, in 1917, the British promised a home for the Jewish people. And that was supposed to be on both sides of the Jordan River. And in 1922, the British changed their amendment or something like that. And eventually they gave, against the promise that they made to the Jewish people, 77% of the land, the mass land, and established the state of Jordan, which is literally a Palestinian nation. I mean, with the kind of people that you would call Palestinian, because there was never a Palestinian country before. They never had a flag. They never had an anthem, a government, nothing. Okay, it was mostly people who were living here in a place which was controlled by the Ottomans. The place was desolated, and when the Jews started to come here, they brought economical opportunities. And many Arabs coming from Lebanon, Syria, Egypt, and other places wanted to come here and multiply the population because they wanted to enjoy the prosperity that the Jewish created. Now, not only that 77% of the mass land was given to Jordan. From the leftovers, okay, we had a division and an understanding that we are only going to get about 56% of the land. And out of that is a desert, the Negev desert, which is 60% out of that total space that we were given. And we accepted that. 77% is gone. The British gave it to Jordan, to Abdallah, and we are left with the leftovers, and we still agreed. And then we were attacked by all those Arab countries on 48. And before that, you have this guy who is very important, and it's very important to understand his role. His name is Haj Amin al-Husseini. And this guy was the Mufti of Jerusalem, and he was responsible here for different attacks against the Jewish settlements and communities. And during those different attacks, just to understand the level of viciousness, he was killing and murdering 500 Jews, but in the same time, because the Arabs who lived there refused the attacks, he killed 4,000 out of them. Now, when the Israelis were, not Israelis, when the Jews came here, they didn't conquer anything. They bought the land from the landowners who were not even here in Israel. They were mostly in Lebanon and Syria. And we paid about 5 times or 10 times the real cost of the land. And not only that, we liberated the serf, because during that time, the people who worked the land were Arabs, okay? But they were like serfs. They were connected to the land. They had to give something like 70 or 80% of what they produced to their owners. And when we bought the land, we basically liberated them. We gave them cash, and they were able to, reinvent themselves and find work or whatever. So we never stole anything. We bought everything, and you can check it historically. It's mainstream. We never stole anything. And when we eventually established this country, the state of Israel in 48, we have been attacked by 7 different countries. And since then, we had endless amount of wars while we are trying to establish a civilization with the rule of law, with equality between men and women, equality between different religions. And this is why the Arabs who are living in Israel are better off than any other Arabs in Syria or Lebanon or Libya or Iraq or whatever. Those countries are very problematic. Now, going back to this, I always forget his name, forgive me, Haj Amin al-Husseini. Not only that he was responsible for the murder of Jews and attacks on Israeli settlements before the country, he was eventually sent away, and he joined forces with Hitler. Okay, he had an office in Berlin. There is even a record that he had an interview or a conversation for 90 minutes with Hitler, and he was responsible for the idea on how to destroy basically Jews in the Middle East. And he became very helpful, and he helped the SS to conscript many thousands of Muslims. I think about 30,000 people from Croatia and other places. Bosnia, I don't remember exactly. Your audience can research that. So he is literally responsible for coming up with the idea of the total destruction of the Jews. Basically, he wanted an Holocaust for the Jews in the Middle East. Now, this guy is a family member of Arafat. Are you familiar with Arafat?
Yes, one of my professors was actually Arafat's brother-in-law. So,
okay. So Arafat was his family member, and this Mufti was basically the founder of the national movement for the freedom of the Palestinians. And eventually he helped to establish the Fatah and the PLO and all those other organizations. And if you come to think about it, eventually we sabotaged our own security by allowing these groups to come into Israel and to speak to them about peace and living together, or even separately, but to understand their right for living. But these people have Nazi ideology. Okay, the same guy who was responsible for the destruction of Jews here in Israel and coming to produce the idea of total genocide for Jews is the father of the PLO. It's all mainstream history. Not only that, in 1979, different Palestinian organizations under the PLO or the Fatah were responsible for arming and training the Iranian militias who overturned in 1979 the Shah in Iran. So you can see the link. So we are basically allowing them to have a state, even though they attacked us and brutally murdered us. And we are all the time trying to have some kind of an understanding and peace. But those people don't want any kind of peace because they want complete submission and destruction of the people, actually, any people who are not Muslims. So this is basically a religious war. And we have to understand that. And the same thing is happening in Europe. Your audience are probably alarmed and worried by what's happening to Western civilization. Basically, the fabric of society, your history, your institution, everything is breaking down. And you have absolute, total immigration of people who are absolutely not compatible to your culture.
And I just want to give a story. So
yes,
following the social media feeds, a lot of people follow my Telegram channel, my X account, because I aggregate news, what I think is most important. And I don't often share the stuff when it comes to the culture war stuff or the migration, because I often see that as I find, like, for me, the most important focus is the move towards world government and the technocracy. But just this week, like a day or two ago, I shared a story which really, it made my blood boil. It was in Italy, and it was these migrants from Middle Eastern countries, where it was a young Italian man and his girlfriend, where, I mean, your blood boils when you see this. 3 to 5 migrant men, they were in their car, they broke the window or something, and they held the man down as they raped his girlfriend. And that's just like, and he like, can you imagine that scene? Like, he couldn't do anything because there were 3 to 5 of them. That is just like, it's so obscene. And this is beginning to happen in Croatia now. I'm told by Croatians that the Croatian government, like in Zagreb, the capital, and police are covering up increasing incidences of rape by migrants because, they need the workforce. They want to be politically correct. They don't want to disrupt Brussels. And I've said before, I was in Croatia this year. This was the first year. This was the year. Prior to this, it was mostly ethnically Croatian. And now it's become like Babylon. And most of the workforce, there was a lot of, Egyptian men working on the infrastructure projects. So anyways, I just wanted to share that, but please continue.
Yeah. If you come to think about it, most of the immigrants who are coming are not really immigrants. They are basically at the age of army time. How to say it? They are usually leaving their women and mothers and children behind, and they are coming to Europe, especially for the welfare state, because they want to milk the tax system of the Western countries. And this is like military age men. People have to realize that. Anyway, going back to the 7th of October, people have to understand the scale of the atrocity that we experience. If you think about what happened in 9/11, where 3,000 people died, this is out of a population of 300 million. In Israel, in one day, 1,200 or more were massacred in the most brutal way out of a population of about 7 million Jews. So think about the ratio here. This is a huge deal. And the kind of brutality that they did was unfathomable. I don't even want to go into the details, but what I want to tell is that we are being presented, especially in Western media, which is a media that does not serve the people and doesn't serve the truth. It's basically a system for propaganda and mind control. They present us as some kind of oppressors and people who are just bloodthirsty, and all the rest of it. We are actually not that. And to be honest, not that I support my government, as I said earlier, my government is not even doing anything to end the war in total surrender and submission of the enemy, like you would expect to see during World War II, where the Allies did that to Germany or Japan. Okay, they brought them to their knees and made them understand war is no longer an option, right? In our region, we are not allowed to end the war. When we attack different neighborhoods or their bases, which they build their bases, their terror bases among regular population, they put it in schools, they put it in hospitals, and I know that firsthand. Now, your audience can choose not to trust me. That's okay. I don't really care, but that's the truth. And when we attack them with missiles or artillery or something like that, we actually call them on the phone, or we send leaflets to let them know, please leave the space. And of course, who is leaving? The terrorists themselves. So we are perpetuating the war without ending it in any possible way. And then Trump, who looks like the great savior of the world, is not. He's actually sabotaging our effort and all the time stopping us in the middle. And when you don't finish a war, then you are going to have a chronic situation of endless bloodshed. So he stopped us in Iran during the 12 days wars. He didn't allow us to finish. Not only that, we did everything possible. I'm speaking on behalf of my state. I'm disgusted by that idea, but it's still true. We were like doing everything possible not to attack civilians. And we were only attacking the political institutions and the army. And when Iran sent the missiles actually fell beside my house and in different areas. They were literally trying to cause as much damage to civilians. So it's not even, it's not a fair war. They play dirty and we try to play by the rules. So Trump, as soon as he was reelected, he stopped us in Lebanon. We didn't finish the challenge that we have there with Hezbollah. He stopped us in Iran. And I can give you an amazing example about Iran that very few people noticed, if you like. Can I?
Yeah.
During the 12 days war, on the third or the fourth day, in his social platform, he said something like, all the people of Tehran, which is their capital city, have to evacuate the city. Now, why would he say something like that? Because if he didn't say something like that, which made millions of people leave the city, there were like huge traffic jams out of the city for days. Why did he do that? He did that for two reasons. One was to demonize the Israelis, because what are we going to do? Are we going to destroy Tehran? Are we going to nuke Tehran when we are doing our absolutely best to try to, to use exact weapons and missiles to take only the leaders or the chief of commands? So he gave them the impression that we are going to destroy Tehran, but even worse, he made all the people that can actually take their life back in their hands and take responsibility for their future and go out to the streets and bring down this regime. Instead of doing that, they escaped the city and tried to save their families. So all the people that stayed in the city mostly were people who were very supportive of the regime. Do you understand? It's like millions of people who should have taken this amazing opportunity to bring back Persia to its glorious days, escaped the city, and were not able to do what everyone was hoping, to bring down the regime by actually going into the streets and revolting against this regime. And later on, he was bragging that he literally saved the Iranian leader, and that the Iranian leader should actually thank him. He has an ego problem, so he wanted to be appreciated for saving him. What kind of a leader will do that? And another and final aspect of that, if you really think about it, Hamas and most of the other jihadi organizations are being supported by Qatar. Okay? Now, nobody can touch Qatar. And recently, Trump and America declared that they have some kind of alliance with Qatar. If someone attacks Qatar, then it would be the same as attacking American land. Why is that the case? So if you go back in time, you find out the Qatari already enjoyed since 1868 alliance with the British Empire. And you know very well how great the British are. Pretty much the real rulers of the world until today. So they had an alliance and they protected them. And later on, until today, Qatar is basically a land that cannot be protected. It cannot be defended. And the only way that they are not being conquered is by having an American base there with 10,000 soldiers and another base of Turkish of 3,000 soldiers. So basically, every time that Qatar is sponsoring jihadi attacks worldwide, they can do that with the permission of the big bosses in America, because otherwise, they will pull the military base and they are going to be conquered by Saudi or Iran or whoever. So we have to think about that. So it seems like we are living in some kind of a Marxist reality in which Israel is the big oppressor. Okay, we are the colonialists. We are now the white. And the poor Arabs, the poor Muslims who are behaving like abnormal, brutal people. And even now, until now, they are still all the time seeking more destruction, even among their own people. Look what's happening, for example, in Syria during the civil war, what's happening in Yemen. Why the world is never talking about the scale of brutality and murder and rape and genocide that is happening in Islamic countries by their own leaders? Never. So all the time Israel is the bad guy. All the attention is given to that, while we are the only country against all odds trying to deal with this problem. Now, I admit that if we were to get rid of this all governments, okay, and we were getting rid of these psychopaths who are perpetuating unnecessary wars and brutality, then everything would be better. But that's not the case. And unfortunately, people have to start recognizing the true danger of what Islam presents, and it's coming to your homes. You're next, guys. And if you come to think about it, in the 17th century, Europe was that near to be taken by Islam when the Ottoman Empire was basically reaching the walls of Vienna. And the only people who actually saved Europe was the Polish. And they came down with 70,000 horsemen, and basically they saved Europe from total destruction. So it's hurting me to think that we are all the time being presented as the bad people, immoral people, murderers of innocent people, when we are not even engaging in proper war. Because if the same happened in the US by Mexico, or in England by France, or whoever, the kind of response would be completely different. So the world is behaving in a very hypocritical way. And in the end of the day, if you will take an Israeli Arab here, and you will ask him, would you prefer to go to live in Syria or Lebanon or Egypt? No. He would never replace Israel.
I've got a few questions, points I want to bring up. And I'd largely wouldn't deny I'd agree with your assessment of Islam. And, I often say things are kind of nuanced where, two different things that are seemingly odd can be true at the same time. I use it as the example in Mexico. Recently, we had these riots, and I believe the Mexican government is a narco state and the president is a narco president, but some of the protest movements were foreign interference. So it's kind of like you're between a rock and a hard place. So yes, it's a bad situation. Yes, there's foreign interference. Both of those stink. And so I just want to, one thing I want to ask you about is the October 7th. And, some people say that was an Israeli false flag operation. Any thoughts there? Or they knew about it and maybe they stood down?
I believe that they stood down. I believe that there was some kind of betrayal. But if you really think and deeply understand the mechanism of the state, then the state is not here to protect us. Okay, this idea is insane, that the rapists and murderers that run any kind of government, we are going to provide us the security that we need. So I believe that it was a combination of some kind of false flag, and all the technology and all the abilities that we had in the South preparing for such a day, all of that didn't work. It actually took about 8 hours for our airplanes and choppers to reach the south, and it only takes 1 hour by car to go from the center of Israel, which is so small. Guys, look at the map. Look at the size of Israel. It's a joke. Okay, so obviously something terribly vicious happened, and I believe that the people on our side are also responsible for that, for sure.
And why do you think if there was betrayal, well, what would be the reason or motivation?
Because I think that it's a bigger play, a geopolitical play to change the face of this Middle East. I think it's probably some kind of a bigger so-called, because it's all a game. It's like a simulation. The people in control are controlling every aspect of all the different governments. I don't believe that you really have the bad guys like Russia and China and all the rest of it. I think that they are allowed to play this position because you need to keep everyone in the in like a dialectic political warfare. And if you create this kind of instability, which is always the situation here, even now, for example, I spoke earlier about Qatar, but if you look at the amazing support that Julani from Syria, who is basically an ISIS terrorist, he's suddenly being accepted everywhere. Okay, how come? What's happening here? And it seems like the jihadi states are the ones who are allowed to become stronger. And someone is sponsoring that. And if you think about the intelligence agencies worldwide, the Five Eyes and all the rest of it, how can they not know what's happening? How can they, allow things to just happen? They see and understand and analyze everything. It's like it's the case. And if you see the armaments and the cars and the weapons that those so-called terrorists have, you have to ask yourself, who is paying for all of that? Who is bringing that from Libya to Iraq and so on? Who actually trained ISIS? It was people who were in American jails for 5 years in Iraq. Okay, so I think that eventually they want to change the face of the Middle East. I think that they basically want to reduce the effect of Russia and China and basically bring some kind of American stronghold and to build a trading route coming all the way from India through Saudi and eventually to the ports of Haifa and Ashdod in Israel, and basically to export products and oil and gas to Europe and to take out the Iranian oil and to take out the Russian oil perhaps. But I'm not sitting around their tables, but obviously the game is rigged, and all of us are just playing the cost. We lose our life, we lose our prosperity for that.
So on that point as well, I have another question. And so I think you're right that these are geopolitical games played at the high level, double and triple agents. I've got a great book by is it Dreyfus? Where William Engdahl wrote one, Lost Hegemon, that mentions how the West are sponsoring, as you mentioned, Qatar and the British are sponsoring jihadis. Where is it? I can't see it now, really. But anyways, really, Dreyfus, The Devil's Game, I think. Anyways, my question is: so there's a clear game to remake the Middle East. We had the NATO, Ralph Peters. In the early 2000s, he published a NATO war game map just for a simulation. People can type it in Google Images if it's still there. But it showed, and then you had the guy that was, I think, Bernard Lewis. I think he was Bilderberg in Council on Foreign Relations in 1979. He published a map of a new Middle East, and a lot of it has come to pass. Like Sudan, so 50 years ago, he published like Sudan would be broken into 2 states. That happened.
It happened,
right? Different changes that we've seen. And so my question is, so I think one of the biggest plays is, as you say, to make a new Middle East. They've said it themselves. I think they want to create a copy of the EU in the Middle East. So it'll be like a Middle Eastern union, supranational union that's integrated, and they have an Arab military structure. Just a few weeks ago, Egypt was calling for effectively a Middle Eastern NATO. But we also see, these reports, and there's some of it evidence there as well of, a greater Israel or Israeli expansion. Thoughts, your I guess response to that?
Yeah, again, people will think that I'm some kind of an agent. I'm telling you guys, there is no greater Israel. The people in Israel are so tired of endless wars, and they are like so pacifistic in their approach, that the last thing they want is to send their children, and we don't have a lot of them. You have to understand the Israeli population is 7 million or something. You have other Arabs and other minorities of about 2 million living in Israel as equal citizens. We cannot even afford trying to conquer other spaces. And not only that, if you look at the different peace agreements that we had with Egypt, for example, we gave them the entire of Sinai. And by the way, what they are doing, they are breaking the agreement, and they are putting different divisions, divisia of tanks and a lot of soldiers against the agreement. And we are at risk, and people are not even talking about it. Egypt, if they are going to attack us, in less than 1 or 2 days, they can actually reach to Tel Aviv, because we don't have the manpower to stop them. Maybe we have for now, the advantage of technology, but it's not enough. In the end of the day, you need boots on the ground to stop such a massive attack. So I don't think we can have a greater Israel. The only thing that we are trying to have is the kind of proxy land, for example, in Syria, because we can see what is happening there to the Druze by the Islamists, and we can see what happened there to the people that belong to the previous government, the Alawi. Okay, they are massacring them. So we are trying to have some kind of space, because everything is so small. And if we don't have that proxy, then they can attack us and conquer areas of Israel in less than a few hours. Again, please, guys, look at the map of Israel, see the real scale. So unfortunately, because of the instability that is allowed here for the jihadi to prosper, we just have to have some kind of security, small pieces of land in Syria, for example, or in Lebanon, in South Lebanon, only to protect our villages. Actually, if you ask me, we should conquer Gaza. If this is something that is going to upset your audience. If I was to have the say in how to deal with the thing that happened in 7th of October, I would give them an ultimatum on the first day, and I would say, give back the hostages. If not, then we are going to destroy something similar to Dresden until you give back our people back. But we are not allowed to do that. And there is no difference between the people of Gaza and Hamas. It's the same people. Hamas is the people. Those are the elected people of these people who are living in Gaza. And we also, many years ago, we left Gaza. We went out. We allowed them, to build their own place. So they had a civil war between Hamas and the PLO. Hamas won brutally. Okay, they killed the opposition, and basically those people, instead of building life and creating businesses and opportunities and educating their children, maybe peaceful parenting or something like that, they are teaching them on how to kill Jewish people. So this is the reality. And if you want to win in war, you have to bring them to the point of total submission. And the only way to do that is by violent force, quickly, until they say enough. Let's talk. Let's understand that we both have the right to live. So on purpose, this is never happening in this area. And this is why you have wars here for 80 years. And it's not going to end. Because the powers that be don't want it to end. Because then they can sell more armaments and they can destabilize the entire region. And they are actually taking advantage of the innocent people on both sides. And I am telling you, every time people are dying, I'm sad for the name of humanity, because as I said earlier, I don't even see myself as an Israeli. I'm just stuck here. And if I will tell the Muslims or the Arabs, I'm not Jewish, I'm not Israeli, they're going to laugh. They see me as part of this collective. So I'm stuck and I'm forced to defend myself. It's insanity what's happening here.
Can I ask you on that last point? So I guess a few different things. You have the settler expansion. So let's say, there were people living in Gaza or West Bank. I'm not necessarily for a Palestinian state, but these people have been, let's say they've been living there. They have their house, and just kind of like you, they just ended up. They've been living there for generations. They have a home in Gaza, and they're growing olives, and they're just what do you call it? An accident of birth. But then I've seen stuff where Israeli settlers expand and then they demolish homes of. I mean, I don't want to. I can't see that all people living in Gaza are violent. You know, I'm sure there are Christian Palestinians and they don't want anything to do with Hamas and Israeli
In
settlers.
Gaza, you don't have Christians.
Or I mean, what about these homes that are demolished and their people, Palestinians are kicked out, and some of the videos that I've seen where entire cities are blown up by the IDF. Just your thoughts there.
Entire cities? You mean?
Well,
in
I mean,
Gaza?
yeah, videos that I've seen where many buildings are just.
Yeah, because the only thing we are doing is we are fighting against empty buildings. And we are trying to, before we were trying to find the hostages, which I think is an excuse. The entire effort of winning the war was sabotage because we put the emphasis on the 200 hostages. We shouldn't have cared about the hostages. We should have cared about winning the war. In World War II, you had about 100,000 military hostages under Germany and about 30,000 under Japan. And nobody cared about releasing the hostages until the end of the war. You can't win a war if you're focused on that. And yes, we destroyed those places because they built a huge system of tunnels under the houses, under the neighborhoods and the hospitals and the schools of their own population. And their population are not like passively not engaged. They are directly responsible for giving their children to Hamas, right, to become soldiers. They are supporting them because if they didn't want that, why isn't that there is no revolution? Why people don't just say we don't want those criminals to be removed from power, and we want to have a normal life? So if you look at this area, you will see that it's always coming back to the same situation: instability, jihadi all over, and they don't even care about life. It's a cult of death. Now, you're right. We are absolutely destroying huge areas, but we are just attacking buildings. We are making sure that the population will move. We are waiting with the attack for 1 week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks until the people actually evacuated and left to a secure area. And of course, there is a lot of collateral damage in a war, but we are not allowed to win the war. The people on the other side are completely passive and not doing anything to remove the cancer that is controlling them and destroying their own life. Because the leaders of Qatar, most of them are in Gaza, enjoying the life in the tunnels? No, they are in Qatar, in huge hotels, living like kings, right? Or in Turkey. So how is it possible? But of course, there is brutality on every side of every conflict. And I'm not going to say that the Israelis are innocent of brutality. Of course, there is brutality, and I wish there wasn't. But if you look at history again, on what I was trying to describe in regards to the history of Islam, Islam is not peaceful. They went out from Arabia, and in less than 120 years, they controlled 60 million people. And everyone who is not a man of the book, who had to pay jizya, became a slave or became dead. So if you think that Islam changed its face, no, it didn't. Actually, it's even more radicalized today. I'm not sure if I answered your question. Yes, there are settlers. They are trying to expand. But remember, where are they expanding? Originally, if you go back especially to our claim on the land as the historical people of Israel, we were here long before. Islam didn't even began before the 7th century. We have a claim on this land, if you believe in God and if you believe in history, for about 1,000 years before the time of Christ. We were here. So I don't think it would be too rude to say that we have a small right for a small piece of land for our own people, especially after what happened to us in Germany during World War II. And when we are basically trying to expand a little bit, we are not going into the cities of the Palestinians and destroying or stealing anything. On the contrary, I remind you, before the establishment of the country, we bought the land from the landowners here. We always bought it. Please, guys, check it out. It's mainstream information. Even in Wikipedia, you can find it. Yeah.
I got
one more thing. It's an absurd to say that a certain this is part of the delusion that we were convinced to believe in. The modern state is a relatively new phenomena. Okay, if you go back before 1871, you don't even have Germany. You have different kingdoms, and the idea that the land belongs to Palestine, the land belongs to Israel, the land belongs to whatever entity, it's ridiculous. The land belongs to people. Okay, individuals or how to say it, like a community. People are living on their land, and the idea that we belong to a certain state is the equivalent of thinking about a state or a country like a tax farm. And we are basically more like, instead of citizens, we are more like cows that can be milked for taxation and to be drafted into the wars that those leaders are producing for us, part of this global agenda. So I think that this is the most important point that I would like to make, if you allow me. I think that when we are speaking about globalism, about the technocracy, about all these different threats and developments that are attacking our humanity and our way of life and civil society and basically culture and history, we have to understand that those people, the people with the mustache and the hat in a room full of smoke, making plans on how to basically control us. Why is it that they can do that? They can do that because we are giving them our energy. We are basically strangling our own necks with the hands of our children. It's this normal, simple people that are fed lies to believe that authority is necessary. And that's the source of all evil. It's the belief in authority. It's the belief that those people have the right to rule us. All people. And what people forgot is morality, simple morality. Your life belongs to you. A Muslim person who lives in whatever land, his life belongs to him. Whatever he produces belongs to him. But when we have this kind of leadership and we have this ritual of voting, then we are basically giving our politicians, which are all criminals, the right to steal from all of us. And it's a right that we cannot even give because we never had it to begin with. Do you see my point? Democracy is basically theft under the excuse of law. Because if for example, me and you, we are living on an island, okay, and we are the only two people, and you are very you're hardworking and you produce a farm and you fish and you create different tools and you prosper, and I'm on the other side of the island and I do nothing, and eventually I reach the point of starvation. Do I have the right to come to your end of the island and force you to give me what you produced or part of it?
Yeah, obviously not.
Okay, so that's a very basic moral understanding of what belongs to him. But then comes the third person, and he called himself politician Trump or whoever, okay? And then he say, don't worry, Harry, you never did or produce anything. You remember the other guy, he's very hardworking. So you're going to vote me, I'm going to vote myself. Now we have the majority, and now we have the moral right to go and steal from him. And that's basically what we have. And we are calling that democracy, and we're calling it a country and a state. And all of that is basically a twisting of simple basic morality. We are being part of a system in which we bow our heads and dignity in front of the worst kind of people. And this is why they can build the infrastructure to perfect and finalize our servitude through this globalism and the introduction of this incredible technology, which they are weaponizing against us. So if we want to stop it, we have to go back to the root cause, and we have to understand that it's our duty to say no to any kind of political authority and to remove the coercion element from society.
I want to get a little bit more into the New World Order, but I just had a few more questions related to the Middle East. Just to close out the whole Israel-Gaza thing, I guess one of my final questions would be, what do you think happens going forward? I mean, I've seen even Israeli politicians say, one recently in the Knesset, that they blame Netanyahu. He has a corruption case, and so if the war ends, then he has to be, Trump just was pleading for Israeli president to pardon Netanyahu. And so as long as there's a war, his case is on hold. So just thoughts on that. And then also, I see the U.S. government moving in. They want to remake Gaza with like Trump towers and make it technocratic. And so just any thoughts on where do you think what will happen and some of those points?
For sure, the war is going to continue one way or another. I think we are going to renew the conflict with Hezbollah and probably Iran. I think there will be no towers in Gaza. It's not even possible as long as you have this population. If you really want to change the population, you have to change their philosophy. It takes more than one generation to inculcate in them the understanding for a peaceful coexistence. Right now, they are being radicalized. And with all that happened in the last 2 years, things are not going to just get peaceful and happy. And as for what's happening with Bibi Netanyahu, I think he's a double agent, because in the end of the day, not only that he is the main prime minister that we had for the last 20 years, and during his time, Hamas became so strong, Hezbollah became so strong, and we allowed it. He allowed it. Not only that, if you remember in the beginning, I spoke about the history of the PLO. And I connected that to the Mufti from Jerusalem, who was basically a partner of the Nazi idea to destroy the Jewish people. So Netanyahu in 91, in the Conference of Madrid, for the first time ever, was the one responsible as he was sitting there in that conference, and he allowed a group of Palestinians under PLO to engage in talks for the first time. This is the first time that in the history of modern Israel that we acknowledge the existence of this PLO as an entity that we can have a discourse with. And they lied to the Israelis, not telling them about the Nazi ideological history of this movement. And in order to hide that, this group of people who came as representative of the PLO, they came together with the Jordanians, not as so-called PLO. So the guy who allowed that for the first time in the history of modern Israel was Netanyahu. So I believe that he is actually, he is responsible for all the mess that is happening here. And I believe that while he's speaking to the right wings here in Israel, making them feel safe and secure, in the end of the day, he never win any war. All the wars are just going to reopen and re-explode. There is no submission.
Can I ask you just any thoughts of this idea that of the Temple Mount? There was a great documentary on the Shin Bet that I saw years ago, where the Shin Bet said in the 1990s some extremist Israeli religious group was going to blow up the Dome of the Rock so that they could pave the way for a third temple to be built. I've seen plans that say you can actually fit as well on the Temple Mount. I've been there. They could create a third temple next to the Dome of the Rock. Then you have the Christian Zionists in America talking about a third temple and the red heifer. Is that something that's discussed in Israel?
The second coming of Christ, right? That would be one of the signs, I suppose.
Yeah, I mean, well, is that anything that's discussed that you hear about in Israel, or just any thought on some of those?
This is, again, some of the propaganda that is, being exported outside. You have to understand the demographics here in Israel. The absolute majority of the population in Israel is secular. They couldn't care less about the temple. If you were here, you probably saw the kind of life we have in Tel Aviv. It's like disgusting and degraded. We have too many gays. Forgive me, I'm not in favor of all this degradation. And people who are like having this kind of entertained mind don't care about temples. They don't care about prophecies or anything like that. I'm telling you that first, I agree, there are probably some groups of radical religious people who think that they should bring back the third temple. But the absolute majority of the people, if you will ask them here in Israel, what do you think about this idea? They will say those people are insane, absolutely insane. Not to mention that we understand that we are surrounded by 1 billion Muslims. If we are going to destroy the Temple Dome and those important places for Islam, then they will have the reason to unite and completely wipe us out of the map. 7 million against 1 billion, come on, we have no chance. So it's an absurd to think that we are going to build it. And to be honest, there is no chance, absolutely no chance. It's just very radicalized groups. And this is exactly how propaganda works. Instead of trying to understand the true identity of the modern Israelis and to understand what's important to them, which is basically reality TV and I don't know, things like that, they take an example of those radical groups and say, oh, look, this is what Israel is all about. It's not the case. Those people are probably hundreds at the worst. They have no say.
I want to ask you just, again, before moving on, you mentioned migration to Europe. Mm-hmm. And it was just, I didn't have time to read it, but there was some headlines, some new news about, we know that it's also, so you mentioned Islam. So I think it is an Islamic project on the one hand. On the other, it's also a globalist project. We've seen many globalists themselves. Peter Sutherland, Bilderberg member, BBC report. He worked for the UN. You can type in Peter Sutherland, BBC migration. You'll find the mainstream article where he says, yeah, our plan is basically to make Babylon of Europe, of many countries. And it was recently reported that Soros is also financing Islamic radicalism and these migrations. So I'm just wondering your thought on why you think they're doing it.
Islam is basically, like I said earlier, is imperialistic in its nature. But the poor people under Islam are basically victims. They are being used as useful idiots to advance globalist agenda. So the main reason for why they bring all those people is first because they need to perpetuate the monetary system in Europe that doesn't work unless you have enough children. And the Westerners, especially in West Europe, somehow are convinced that children is a nasty thing and they don't produce enough. So they actually have the excuse to bring all those people as potentially workers, not to mention that they can increase the electorate of the left because the people are coming for more welfare and they will be receiving more free goodies. But the main reason is because they want to change the identity of Europe, because Europe in so many ways is the cradle of civilization. And this is where you have individuals. This is where you have human rights and the understanding of what's right and wrong, moral behavior. So if you destroy that, then there is no one to basically stop what's coming. The world, the one world government and all this technocratic nightmare can only happen if people completely forsake the idea of liberty, freedom, morality, civil society, and the culture, the values that the West produced. And it was very bloody and hard for the West to come up with these incredible, beautiful things, and now they are trying to take it away. So if you are flooding the lands and the countries with incompatible cultures, eventually you're going to change demographics, and you are also weakening the fabric of society, including especially men. Men now in Europe mostly are cucks. That's why they are looking at us and they think, look how brutal we are. No, we are not brutal. We are not even doing 1% of what Europeans did to themselves during the big two wars. But because they have this woke agenda and understanding, they cannot understand that sometimes you just have to stand and fight for what's right. So I'm not claiming that Israel is protecting Western civilization, but we are at the front of this attack because for globalist reasons, they sent us here as basically Israel is basically a front base of British interest. Okay, that's the original idea, and the Jews are just expendable because you can't really build anything serious with Muslims. And sorry, yeah, you can't, because look at all the Muslims who are coming to Europe. Why they are coming to Europe? If they are so successful and productive, why don't they stay in the countries where they are coming from and rebuilding themselves properly? So Israel, in a very short time, became one of the richest countries in the world. And that's because we can actually produce something, because we believe in many values which are in common with the West. Many people call that Judeo-Christian values and the rest of it. So I think the main idea is to basically remove everything that smells from whiteness, because whiteness equals the only possible resistance against this collective hive mind of what every other culture produce. If you look at any other culture in the world, they are mostly collective in their mentality. And this is what you need. And Islam actually is not only a religion, it's actually even more a totalitarian system. If you actually look at the Sharia laws, I think there were some statistics that show that more than 50% of the entire system of laws under Sharia is basically political, social, economical, and the rest of it. It's a totalitarian system. So yeah, that's what I think.
Rapid fire questions. A few more for you. Thoughts on Zionism?
Disgusting. Everything that has to do with nationalism, even though now people are awakening as a response to woke, they want to become very patriotic, very nationalistic, and Zionist is just an excuse to use the Jewish idea to build here a front base for globalist interest and have a perpetuated war against Islam. And to destabilize the area. I think that everything that has to do with a collective mindset is poisonful. And if you want to be part of a community, do that like any other institute of civil society, which is all voluntary. But political movements are always violent. They are always coercive, and they never serve the regular people. So it's terrible. I am not a Zionist.
What any thought on, again, because these are things that are being discussed, John Mearsheimer, I've got a copy of the book Israel Lobby. Just what's your thought when it comes to AIPAC and the Israeli lobby that's being discussed?
Of course it exists, but what about the Muslim lobby and any other kind of entities? If you have a political structure, that controls every aspect of the people who are living under this structure, then you are going to have different lobbies trying to take advantage of this structure. That's the nature of it. But if you remove the big elephant in the room, which is the state, how can you have any impact? How can you use the lobby to influence how to call it? My English, I apologize. Lobbies can only be used if you have someone that you can bribe. But if you have nobody to bribe, who are you going to bribe? So, of course, there are different Jewish organizations that are trying to advance their Jewish interest or Israeli interest. Yes, it exists. But if you look at the money trail, and there are researchers who did that, the scale of money that Israelis can afford to spend is tiny compared to the money for coming out, for example, from Qatar. You can see it mostly in the universities in America. Billions of dollars to basically brainwash the students there with the idea that Islam is so good and peaceful and all the rest of it, and Marxist ideas. So yes, of course there is a lobby.
On the idea, I guess. So I want to ask you more about the New World Order, but I guess when it comes to Islam. Patrick Wood wrote he's an expert on technocracy. He wrote, I think you've interviewed him, right?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So he wrote a very fascinating article not long ago discussing how, we're switching the banking systems now. We're moving to digital ID, tokenization, stable coins, all that stuff. He says the biggest money and the biggest banks that are on that leading edge are the Gulf countries, UAE, Saudi, that basically control a lot of the banks when it comes to fintech and tokenization and Islamic finance. And he's saying they might, through the financial system and banking, be able to quietly take over a large control of the world. Do you fear Islam you think it's possible? Do you fear, what's your biggest fear here, that Islam could take over Europe? Do you think they could take over the world?
I think, again, Islam is being used by the bigger globalists. and it's all like a big play, and there is like different kind of poison for different kind of population. So of course those interests are eventually going to be consolidated into total control of every aspect of our life. And I don't see a real difference between the Muslims banking system that you described, or Israeli or American or any of that. They are not this is basically an aristocratic elite, okay, that wants to perpetuate the difference between the rest of the herd, this beast of burden, as they call us. Okay, all of that is eventually not going to serve us, and it doesn't matter anymore where it's coming from, because we didn't wake up on time. There is a battlefield, and we didn't show up. And continuing to do that, even though, of course, you are an example for a fantastic and incredible and useful awakening hub, and I salute you for that. But in the end of the day, if we are going to stay in the virtual realm and not have impact in the real world, building communities and actually to begin in relationship in the family, and having peaceful parenting to our children, and getting rid of this delusional belief in the authority of psychopaths, then eventually they are just going to push forward. And yes, it doesn't matter if it's going to come from Saudi or if it's going to come from London. I'm sorry that, I just see that as a bigger picture, and I'm trying to suggest and recommend for people to understand the root cause. How did we reach the point where they can do whatever they want in this organization and international think tanks? How come they have so much power? And I believe that eventually the state, the modern state, is the mechanism that they created for total enslavement. And eventually they're going to turn it into a post nation state, and it's going to become some kind of technate of different countries united as a EU, or you're going to have an African Union, or Russian Eastern Union, or America, Canada, and Mexico, and maybe Panama and Greenland. I don't know. If you look, for example, at the technocrat book from the 30s, on the cover you can see a map of North America as one technate, and it includes Greenland, it includes Panama, and Mexico, and Canada. Actually, Patrick Wood was kind enough to show me the book cover. So I think that it's the logical conclusion of having the mob of the people under Prussian education, building up the loyalty to the state, which will eventually be replaced by post-state into a global system.
It's interesting you say this, and I agree, because I just got an email. I haven't even had time to read it, but I was trying to read it while you were talking just now, and it's from Dr. Martin Erdmann, a German Christian theologian who I hold in high regard. He had a heart attack a few days before he was supposed to come on the podcast, but he sends me emails, and this most recent one has to do with what you're saying. The title is just nationalism. The guy is like a madman, in the good sense that he reads so much and pulls up sources from everything, and he's sending me some essay from a century ago, and I think he agrees with you. So he's talking about nationalism as a religion. He's sending me these excerpts from some book that's really old, and it says, they hoped war would give birth to a new religion of vital patriotism, that is, of consecration to the state. A new religion of nationalism would eclipse and even supplant the old Republican patriotism that in truth was the Archimedean point of the interventionist enterprise, the cult of the nation that they hoped to erect in its place through a titanic foreign war. The only possible way of doing it, says, if the rulers cannot get along with people, they will just have to elect new people. Anyways, but I think it's pretty much, and that goes back to what I think we agree in the sense that I view democracy and this nation states as we see them today as what Erdmann alludes to as sort of this occult, esoteric, mystical, theosophic sort of religion, and voting as their like ritual or rite. And it's, as you said, you just explained it, it's been the tool and framework to allow them to achieve global domination. I've said for the longest time, I think because all of the revolutions that brought in the modern republic were occult, Masonic, Jacobin revolutions, Illuminati, the American Revolution, Masons. It was to create a new, what would you call it? A new platform, a new system of hundreds of republics that could then take over every piece of territory over the planet. So you create 200 republics, and then those can become a world republic or federation.
I actually think that the experiment with the American Revolution was a little different. It was mostly based on a different kind of enlightenment, especially the Scottish common sense realism, which is not the same philosophy like the continental, like coming from Germany and France with those insane people like Kant and Hegel. What we are living today is in a Hegelian dialectic, and this is a different kind of structure where human beings are just being used to build the state, because the state is basically the expression of the ultimate God. And I think that, of course, they allowed the left to be radicalized and to take different smaller groups of work and use this, the queer theory and the cultural race theory and all this insane thing to basically annoy the normal people who are coming from different Christian traditions, and to basically nudge them and push them to be radicalized themselves. It's like to mobilize them into the response that they wanted to create. And the response is ultranationalism. And eventually that creates the hive mind mentality that will eventually be pushed into this multipolar world and endless conflict. And eventually they are going to provide the endless solution. And they are going to say, people can't get along. We can't have it anymore. The state, the idea of a sovereign state failed. And it's in a way very similar to the so-called pandemic. As soon as they present something which is bigger than the ability of every independent sovereign nation to deal with, then you can have the international organization to make the rules by how to play. So I think they are going to bring some kind of a nationalistic, radical response to the point of maybe war, maybe even third world war. And you have the BRICS, you have the Western hegemony, and eventually I think this is going to prepare the ground for the end result, which is, yes, one world government, and the end of liberty, and the end of many of the Western values that I respect so much. Actually, I would like to say that on the record, for me, the fall of Western civilization is a nightmare. When I see that and I see the lack of response of the people that I look up to, okay, because with all due respect to the Israeli history, which so many people claim to respect and admire, I actually look to the West, because Western civilization is incredible. It's beautiful. And I don't understand why people are just, becoming so passive and allowing it to be destroyed. So wake up.
Yeah, I'd agree. And I guess just to pull on that thread, you mentioned multipolarity, and I think I told you my viewpoint. I mean, would you agree that multipolarity is a psyop to just promote globalism? Or what do you think?
Yeah, I absolutely agree with that. I don't think that anything that is happening is like a true kind of conflict between different forces that do not agree on anything. I think that this is like different kind of step that they have to take to condition the population of the world, especially the Western one, to just accept things that they wouldn't accept otherwise. So you have to create all the time tension and problems to basically weaken the people into submission. I don't believe for a second that Putin, look at Putin, for example. It's a joke. I mean, what does he really do? If you really look at the size of his army and population and land and resources, you would assume that he will be able to take down Ukraine in 2 weeks. Okay? Again, they perpetuate the war. Why? Because they want to weaken the traditional religious populist impulse of the Russian people, and to basically just bring them into these end game results that they are looking for. I don't think that Putin is speaking on behalf of the Russians. And if I'm not mistaken, Klaus Schwab even said that Putin and Merkel and Macron are the first generation of the so-called young leaders, right? I'm sure I saw something like that.
So, yeah, something like that. And I just latest interesting news: the Zaporizhia nuclear plant, which provides a massive electricity. Part of the Ukraine deal is Russia gets half of it, and Ukraine gets the other. And immediately, I think of technocracy because they need that electricity to build out the algorithm ghetto in Russia and Ukraine, and it's all for this war is just to bring about everywhere in Russia, in Ukraine. As you said, it's an excuse to rebuild the digital state, the resources for technocracy. I've also been arguing it's a pretext to accelerate the creation of the Eurasian Union, and things like that. And I also want to ask you, we touched on this in my interview with you, but just your thought, I thought was interesting, or maybe we talked off the record. I don't remember. Just your opinion. You said, you don't believe in Christianity or anything like that, but you still realize the danger of this New Age Gnosticism theosophy, which is Luciferian. And I see a lot of it in alternative media, and it's rising. Just what's your thought on that stuff?
Well, in order to establish a new world order with one world government, you have to convince the people into some kind of a perennial religion, which has elements of truth from every religion. But come on, this is a subjective truth that you can have truth here and truth here. You can have either truth in one place, and the rest, by definition, has to be a lie. And when you are starting to combine all the elements of all different religions into one religion, which is basically Luciferian, like you said, you are only doing that to please the people into consolidating their life into a system that they can relate to. So if suddenly the differences between Islam and Christianity are no longer visible to the people because they are under one system, then we can all be lovey-dovey. But that's not the case, and there are differences, and good that they are, and we have to acknowledge them. Christianity is not compatible with Islam. So eventually, I believe that the New Age movement is also exists to basically remove the understanding that people should have of objective reality, because this is part of the subjective pseudo reality that those religions are creating. Not only that, they are creating some passive love everyone, Christ is in you, and those narratives are basically taking away the ability of men and women to defend themselves and to be able to acknowledge dangers. So yes, it's all just another part of the game, and that's why they, if you look at the Lucis Trust, which used to be Lucifer's Trust, it's sitting in the United Nations, right? It's a publishing house, and they are able to produce all this nonsense. And if you see people, what was the name of this black woman who had the guest show? Famous guest show, Oprah. So you can see, for example, how they utilized her to bring about all those people who promoted different versions of what I would call New Age. So it's to take away the identity, the traditional and religious identity of the people, which was organic in so many ways and developed for millennia. So you remove that by something else, which is completely irrational and mystical, and it can be used. And if you remember, there is this KGB in the 70s, what's his name? Yuri Bazmanov. Of course, I'm sure you know him. So he was responsible for the department of the KGB in India. And I think he was speaking about the importance of bringing Westerners to India and to influence them with this Eastern mystical nonsense. And when you bring that back to the West, it's becoming part of the destabilization system. And I think there is some kind of an unholy connection between mysticism and Marxism, which is basically agnostic religion, which communism is basically a religion. It's not an economical social system. So I believe that all of that is being presented as a way to remove our identities, to confuse us, and to bring us into this new world ideas. Because religion is so important. It's like the third leg of the stool. So you have to give an answer to that.
Precisely. And, I was just thinking, you mentioned Oprah. There's something called New Thought, which I see as overlapping with New Age, and Oprah and others like her were key in promoting it. And, Lucis Trust just they made a new website called greatinvocation.org, and they talk about it as their mantra for the New Age. And in the Great Invocation, I mean, they openly say that the Antichrist is here, this world leader, and that we must come together, all of us in the world, and do this great invocation, and so he can be prepared to be unveiled. I mean, you literally cannot make this stuff up. And I just want to mention in the podcast, this is the first time I'm mentioning it in my podcast. I do it on my weekly analysis for paid subscribers. Jaz Coleman of The Killing Joke, he's a British heavy metal singer. I saw him perform 20 years ago in Chicago. He admits he's a product of the Tavistock Institute of the British Empire, and he admits open source in articles saying our goal is to destroy Christianity. And he was commissioned by Lucis Trust. I just discovered this. It's on their website to make music for their Great Invocation. He produced a Gnostic Mass. And you can go to the website, Lucis Trust, where Jaz Coleman effectively said in an article he wrote that, yes, he's saying this is all a good thing. He's saying we're going to be moved into 21st century smart cities. It's going to be a global technocracy. It's going to be a hive mind. We're going to have planetary consciousness, everything, oneism. Everything must be together, one, and the UN is going to lead it. There you go. Like it's crazy, and so
done deal. Yeah.
It's all in the open. So, any other thoughts that you think is interesting, and do you just see this technocracy pushing forward, like there in Israel? You're going to have your digital IDs and social.
Of course, everything is. It's the central banks here are trying to remove cash from circulation, and of course they are speaking about digital money and all the rest of it. Guys, Israel is not an exception. We are not the Illuminati. We are not controlling the world. Actually, we are the only population in the world that is under systematic attack all the time. So everything that is attacking the West and attacking basically civilization and the world is happening here. And if you look, for example, during the pandemic, the Israelis took this beautiful injection into the veins by the numbers. What was the numbers? Everyone above the age of 19 took the first injection. 90% of the people took the first injection. Okay? So the globalists, they don't see the Israelis as chosen people. We are just beasts of burden that can be used and manipulated and taken advantage. And the same things are happening here. 15 cities, 15-minute cities, the whole shebang. It's the same game. And I would like actually to use your amazing platform to remind people of two very important things. First, to understand peaceful parenting, because what's happening to our generations and our people we are so traumatic, and we can be manipulated, and all the things that are happening because we are not raising our children. We are abandoning them in public school, public education systems, which serve the system. Okay. The child is building his bond and loyalty towards the system, towards the government, and is also experiencing trauma. I would also invite your audiences to research into something called ACEs, which is adverse childhood experiences, and how does different kind of traumas that we experience as children, how does it inform the architecture of the brain and our psychology, and eventually even our health. There are studies about that, and we need to understand that, because the way we raise our children will eventually inform the way our the world is going to look like. So if people are awakening to understand this technocratic nightmare, why do you still send your child to school? What's wrong with you people? It's your family, it's your blood. Take care of them, right? I mean, that's the most basic thing. And you need to give special attention and care to the unity and the strength of the family, and to build or rebuild communities. And if it requires to go to church and rebuild the Christian light, wonderful, whatever it takes. So I think this is very important, and I'm worried that not enough people are speaking about that, because they are so worried about the AI God that is going to govern our life. We already submitted our life to the phone, and we voluntarily gave them complete and utter control into every aspect of our life. And we surrendered our children. How can we win this war if we don't care about our children and sending them away so we can, have monopoly money that they produce out of thin air? Like,
so yeah, just to close then, what would you say are the best things that we can do? Is it, as you say, homeschooling, raising the next generation to be, as I joke, John O'Connor's and Sarah O'Connor's, like in the Terminator, the rebels that will fight Skynet? Is that basically kind of you? What would you propose? Anything else that we
I actually don't think that we need to weaponize ourselves and go to war as rebels, because the system exists between the ears of every person. We have been deluded to believe that the structure of society has to be the way they present it to us, and we can rebuild it differently, and it has to be rebuilt on a different code, a different philosophical code, which puts objective morality at the center of every interaction, human interaction. So if we want to win that, we just have to get rid of the belief that those people are legitimate leaders, all of them, no exception, because every time they are giving you like a new opportunity to choose between rapist number 1 and rapist number 2, and then people are like fighting and colliding as if it's this messiah or that messiah. They are all false, they are all liars. Every one of you in day-to-day life are demonstrating the understanding of taking responsibility in your life. But when it comes to the political realms, you suddenly become an infantile and you say, no, I will allow the worst kind of people to run my life, to control my life and make decisions on my behalf. So first, people have to remove this idiotic idea, the belief in authority. Then they have to remember that this hyper-reality, which is built out of words and ideas and ideologies, it's just the opinions of men. And it's very rarely connects with reality. So we have to relearn proper metaphysics so we can have a fundamental anchor to anchor ourselves with real existence. And from that, we have to produce the understanding of morality and freedom, and we have to take charge of our families, raise our children, become a channel of, to channel for values, to how to say it, it's our responsibility to take all the good things that we produced before and to channel it into our children, so they can continue to live and abide by those values. And schooling, which was originated in Prussia for the worst kind of reasons, is not the place for our children. So, and we also have to go back to the center of the village, the agora. We have to speak the truth there. And we have to understand that we shouldn't, just be at the sidelines, allowing people to think of us as if we are weirdos and crazy and all the rest of it, and negate ourselves from being able to say the truth. So we have to remove ourselves from X and Facebook and all the rest of it, and make friendship and make a network of a mutual help, and go to the center of the city and speak truth, and go to different houses and invite people and speak to them about what's happening, because time is very, very short.
Time is short. You're reminding me, in my agora, I'm leading the battle against the dystopia. There's that meme, I don't like to curse, but there's a guy with a mask and a gun, and he says, F this dystopia. And I'm fighting against the biometrics and I'm saying I'm not complying. I was telling one of my neighbors and he's like, "Oh, I never thought about that. That this app that they want everyone to use, um, our data will be there and it can potentially be stolen." He's like, "That's I'm not going to comply either," he said. And so, one by one, just being completely defiant. Any final thought, and then tell us where people can find you.
Final thoughts. I think I want to take this opportunity to thank you for what you're doing. You're a very special case of someone who actually care. So I will invite your audience to support you, because I suppose that you sacrifice so much to be able to do what you do. So thank you so much for that. And as for me, I have a small YouTube channel that it seems like everyone is trying to ignore, and I'm trying to bring incredible people like you, so I can introduce those ideas to the people here in Israel who are very, very passive and uncaring. And you can find me on YouTube in Wovenart channel. I'm sure you will put a small link. And I plan to build some Telegram group with live chat again, so people can get to know each other and go deeper and speak about important things.
Yeah, the link is in the description, and you've interviewed Richard. A lot of folks I've talked to: Richard Poe, Dr. Jacob Nordengard, Patrick Wood, Courtney Turner, and so for people listening, it's just really a small thing to do, and it helps all of us. Just click on the link in the description, and if you've got a YouTube account, just subscribe to Wovenart on YouTube, or Pentagon Tube, as I prefer to call it. Yes. So thank you for the discussion, Harry.
It's my pleasure. Thank you very much for having me. And I'm sorry for my English. I know it's destroying the ears. The accent.
never be sorry. I always say, if anyone criticizes me, who's throwing the stone? Do you speak 2, 3 languages? No, shut up. Then. So
yeah.